Hello. Today we'll continue a little bit more with the genitive, right? And the apostrophe and the of possessive, right? This is the entry from Fowler, pages 688 to 689. And what I wanted to do here was to draw your attention to something that we also saw in Unit 6, Section 5. Remember from grammar and vocabulary, right? And what we see here is that there are these two constructions, right? Which is the apostrophe s and the of possessive, which are not distributed freely. That is to say, usually it is either one or the other, and nothing seems to help us decide which one is more appropriate. And this is the kind of discussion that Birchfield wanted to carry out based on Fowler's writings, right? And that's why he wrote this entry. I find from this entry two things that are very interesting. One is the use of synonymy, right, in order to refer to these constructions. I will give you some examples right now. And the other is that while trying to throw light on this issue, of course, what usually happens is that we are a bit at a loss, right, because it is difficult, right? There isn't a clear-cut distinction to help us choose one over the other one, right? This is mostly a question of usage, right? Birchfield says that Fowler may have been off target, that is to say, may have gotten the wrong answer, and so he wants to elucidate, the question further, right? And to elucidate means to make something clearer, right? All right. He refers to the two constructions, right? That is to say, either the apostrophe s or the of possessive. He speaks of them also as the rival constructions or the two genitival constructions. Why do I say this? Well, because notice how, though it may be difficult if you're not used to these terms, how in our minds we realize that he's talking about the same thing. When he uses the term rival, we realize that actually this is because they are competing against each other, right? And it's either one or the other that wins, right? And then he has different terms for the other constructions. In the case of the of construction, maybe he says the of possessive, the of construction, the prepositional genitive, right? And also, in order to talk about the apostrophe s, he tells us the apostrophe s or the apostrophe genitive, or the apostrophe s genitive. Then he's going to talk about non-personal genitive, that is to say, when it is an object, or inanimate, right? Which is the same thing. And for animate, he also uses another term which is living things, right? So all of this is what we call synonymy, right? Or simply something people refer to as elegant variation. I don't know, elegant. I don't know if you've heard this term, and I don't know if they have it here. No, they don't. It is simply another elegant term to talk about synonymy, right? Though the technical term is synonymy. All right. Now, does he help us? Not really. We know that normally living things or animate things will take the apostrophe s, as he says, John's book, my mother's apartment, the neighbor's faces, her friend's apology, and so on and so forth. And if it's inanimate things, especially if they're monosyllabic, the sun's rays, a day's work. But remember from Unit 6, the popularity of the film or the film's popularity, right? In that case, the two coexist without problems. Now, of course, there are certain words that choose the apostrophe, especially the ones for time, like the day's routine, an hour's drive, also for space, the journey's end, a stone's throw. That means very very near, right? A stone. This is a stone's throw from here, meaning very, very close by, right? A very short distance. We've lived just a stone's throw from here or from each other, right? And also we can have this at arm's length, right? To talk about something you want to keep away from you, right? Your clients at arm's length, or someone at arm's length, right? In this case, because it was smoking, but it could be something emotional too. Then combinations with sake, for Peter's sake, all time's sake, which we saw in the previous video about the apostrophe, right? By the way, remember I wrote here. Sorry, I didn't write this. I wanted you to review the question of the difference between apóstrofe, que es una interpelación vehemente, un dicterio también, right? Cuando se habla de una manera muy vehemente a personas presentes o ausentes, and as opposed to apóstrofo, que es el símbolo, el signo ortográfico del que estamos hablando en este momento. All right, going back to Fowler, then there are fixed expressions like being at death's door, right? Which is merely in a very, very bad, not necessarily about to die, right? But in very, very bad situation, right? Because you're ill, sorry. It may be you may die, but not necessarily. To keep someone out of harm's way, meaning safe, something in your mind's eye, something that focuses your attention, right? Then he talks about the word edge, which is typically used with apostrophe s, like the cliff's edge, the water's edge, the pavement's edge, right? So it seems there's something about the word edge that prefers the apostrophe s rather than the of construction. Now, another typical thing is the ship's provisions and the boat's gangway, you know, that's the la manga, right? Gangway. We call this manga. Okay, and he will continue giving us more examples in which the apostrophe s is natural or not, right? In cases in which it is not, like a glass of water, right? A dose of salts, right? He wraps it up by telling us that, yes, animate nouns prefer the apostrophe s, and non-personal nouns the of construction, right? But that doesn't mean that this is a closed case and this will remain as such forever, right? He closes the entry by saying, it does not seem from the evidence available to me that the apostrophe s genitive for inanimate nouns is commoner now than it was a century ago, though it and the of construction are not free alternatives. So it's not that they co-occur, right? It is either one or the other. And this seems to be a matter of choice, a choice that speakers make. So it's a question of usage, and it stays like that. Last sentence. The reason for the shift in this direction lies deeply buried in a long, drawn-out historical process, right? So something that took a lot of time. Newspaper headlines, Paquet, Fowler, have had little or nothing to do with it, right? So he says, well, we cannot blame newspapers, right? But he uses this word that is so academic, right? And I wanted you to have a look at this, right? Possibly new word for you. You can say Paquet. To me, this is the most correct pronunciation because it comes from Latin, and that's supposedly how we pronounce the C. But you can hear also Pache and Pacey, right? And this is used before a person's name, like in this case, Paquet Fowler, to politely disagree with what they have said. Es decir, que sería como decir, con perdón de Fowler, con perdón del profesor Jones, right? That's the idea in Paquet someone, right? Con el perdón de tal persona. All right. Then I also asked you to go to the beginning of this entry in letter S, right? Because on page 106, on page 684, the first entry is apostrophe S, and you have other combinations with sake, right? Which I mentioned in the previous video. Also for names, Achilles being a classical name, not taking the apostrophe, but Burns is taking the apostrophe S, even though it ends with an S, right? And then he talks about this entry that we discussed, and also that he makes a reference to the double possessive. And remember that when you speak about a friend of my mother's, and it is a double possessive because you get the of and the apostrophe s. Do not get confused with the group possessive, right? My mother and my father's house, right? Which the group is my mother and my father, and then the apostrophe s, which appears after father, actually refers to both, right? Okay, I think this is a very interesting entry, and I hope you begin to think more seriously about what to choose, right? But remember that this is usually a question of usage. So sometimes when you want to create a phrase in which there's a genitival relationship, that is to say, of possession between two nouns in English, well, you might want to go to the dictionary and check if there is something there. I have been forgetting to do this in these videos, which I think is a very useful thing, right? Although this time there have been very, very few choices, but I think it's useful because it will help you remember. Remember, at death's door, at arm's length, a stone's throw. Well, this wasn't here, so elegant variation is a linguistic term. And genitive, remember, which is a form of referring to possession or connection between two things, right? And here you have all the possibilities, right? You can check them out. Okay, thank you very much. That is all.